What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Today's featured blade, the Ganzo Firebird FB7603 carbon fiber. This is the carbon fiber G10 laminate variant of the FB760 series. The 3 on the end of that denotes it is in a coated blade. It does have a sort of a charcoal gray coating on it. This is part of the FB760 series. It was introduced late 2017, last quarter of the year. One of a few original design models that came out late last year. And this is the first Ganzo Firebird model with a ball bearing pivot in combination with their G-lock, the borrowed axis lock design. It was very well received by reviewers and Ganzo fans alike. I think that it should have gone a long way to prove that Ganzo Firebird can do original designs rather than borrowing designs from other manufacturers. So I think, at least for me, I expect to see Ganzo Firebird move in this direction of original designs from here on out. All right, let's set this down real quick. We'll take a look at the packaging. The packaging is the typical Firebird Ganzo box packaging. It is a slide tray type of packaging. It does have a slide out tray on the inside of it. In that tray you will find the knife in a bubble wrap bag, and then you've got the Ganzo Firebird microfiber drawstring pouch. Very nice at this price point. And as typical for Ganzo Firebird, in their carbon fiber G10 models, you are looking at $25 or less for this knife. So this packaging and the addition of that microfiber pouch is very welcome. Let's take a look at our labeling right here, FB7603-CF. And then this is a little sticker they put on saying they're going to go with this Firebird branding and logo from here on out. All right, set that right there, nice and pretty. Let's go ahead and knock the specs out on this knife real quick. This is an EDC size blade, in my opinion. You're right at 3.5 inch blade length, and that's 9 centimeters. Your blade stock thickness, 128 thousandths of an inch, or 3.25 millimeters. Your blade width, 1.08 inches, or 27.6 millimeters. Your handle length, 4 3/4 of an inch, or 12 centimeters. Handle thickness, pretty much spot on 1/2 inch, or 12.7 millimeters. Your handle width at the widest point at the pivot, 1.195 inches, or 30.36 millimeters. Your closed width at the widest, 1.36 inches, or 34.55 millimeters. Your overall length right at 8 1/4 inches, or 21 centimeters. Stop pin diameter, 154 thousandths of an inch, or 3.9 millimeters. Behind the edge thickness, I measured that at 3 spots and averaged it out, and it went about 23 thousandths of an inch, or right at 0.6 millimeters. Your handle to blade ratio, very decent, 0.73, and your weight, an easily carryable 4.23 ounces, or 120 grams. All right. Guys, we're trying a little bit different background on this video. I picked this up. That is actually gray if it looks white in your monitor, but it is gray. And I'm going to use it with darker colored knives like this to make things show up a little bit better. As I said, going into this video, this is an original design from Ganzo Firebird. Very much welcome from this company. They already give us a fantastic product at around the $20 to $25 price point. It is very nice to see these original designs. As far as materials go, pretty much the same old with this knife. You're in 440C for the blade. In this 7603 version, you have a gray sort of graphite colored coating on it. You know, a couple of blue steel thumb studs here. In your handle material, you've got the carbon fiber G10 laminate. Let's take a look at this. You can see it is G10. It has a single layer of carbon fiber on it. That gives you the look of carbon fiber, but the cost effectiveness and strength of G10. Your hardware in the handle, all your screws are the now typical blued steel screws from Ganzo. Then your cross bolt for your locking system, your G-lock, is in the as machined satin finish. The liners are substantial steel liners, and they have the same gray, graphite gray finish that the blade does, as well as this new fold over deep carry pocket clip. It also has the same gray finish. So pretty typical of materials and finishes with the Ganzo carbon fiber models. Now, as far as your fit and finish goes, you know what? I've already said this before on video. A lot of people think that Ganzo just keeps getting better and better and better with their fit and finish and their quality and blah, 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 and I disagree. This knife is absolutely the same as every Ganzo carbon fiber model that I have reviewed for the last year, which is excellent. Don't get me wrong, it is very good fit and finish at this price point, but is it getting better? No, it's just staying the same, guys, which is acceptable to me, because there's a lot of manufacturers out there that their quality gets worse. Not so with this knife. The quality is staying the same, the fit and finish is. On your blade, the grinds, your primary grinds are even side to side. Your edge grind is even side to side. Very well done there. Your swedge grind, let's get some reflecting light on that. You can see that the plunges on this swedge grind are very even. You know, the only issue that I see in the blade as far as the grinds go is this sharpening choil, again, does not come out past the plunge grind, and you get this wankiness at the termination of the sharpened edge here on both sides. If you resharpen this knife, it will be impossible to sharpen to termination without getting up into this plunge. So take that into account, guys. That's something I wish more manufacturers would pay attention to, regardless of price point. Fit and finish in your handle. These handle scales, no problems there. They're always machined well, finished well. Even with the liners, you know, there's no gapping. There's no a bunch of unevenness here, guys. You know, typically on corners or parts like this, you might see a gap somewhere, but you don't see that here. You can see everything is flush the way it is fitted together, including this G10 backspacer. No issues there or on the finish of the liners or the pocket clip or anything, guys. The only thing really that stands out to me in this handle is, if you'll look real close at that pivot screw that is blue, the recess of the socket is actually purple. You know what? If that had been done on purpose and was like that on every one of these screws, that would be the coolest thing. I would have no issue with that, and I really don't have an issue with it now, but it's just a few of the screws are that way. You can see on these small screws, that one's blue down on the inside, that one's blue down on the inside, that one's purple down on the inside, that one's blue. The back screw here is blue down on the inside, or maybe that's purple, I can't tell. Then you can see you've got some purple in around the base of the thumb studs. So the coloring is still not perfect on these blued parts. And I have to be perfectly honest with you guys. I am so sick of the blue stuff on these knives. I'm just sick of it. Just personally, I'm done with it. This knife, I think, would look just as good with a uniform satin as machine finish on all of this hardware, in my opinion. All right, so fit and finish, no issues there. It's Ganzo Firebird, guys. These knives are such a great bargain for their price. You're $25 or less in a knife that looks that good. And that's just taking into considering the looks, guys. That's it so far. There's more going on in this knife. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the action on this knife. This knife is the first Ganzo Firebird G-lock knife on a bearing pivot. And it's smooth, guys. There's no doubt about that. Look at this. It's free fall smooth. It's guillotine smooth, guys. It just bounces off the back pin, or the stop pin, I'm sorry. So it does take a little bit of technique to open and close it, and you want to keep your fingers out of the way. That's a fairly substantial blade at over 3 millimeter stock thickness, and it guillotines down on your fingers. It is going to cut you, okay? So be careful of that. As far as that pivot goes, it is steel bearings and a single row bearing in a bronze cage. I did disassemble this knife and took a look at it. Actually, it's pretty well done. And it came apart and it went back together. The centering stayed good on it. No issues there, guys. That is the original centering. That's the way it went back when I disassembled and reassembled. The only issue I've had out of the pivot is the pivot screw does not want to stay tight. I have blue Loctited this pivot screw 3 times. Within 30 or 40 openings and closings, it's getting loose again. And while that does not cause any side-to-side play, and it's really not affecting the centering more than a hair, it gets to where it opens and closes so easy that it becomes dangerous. It will instantly, all right? It's fairly tight right now, guys, but it gets loose, it will instantly fall and cut you if you are not conscious of that blade at all times when opening and closing. Just keep that in mind. It's a very easy roll-in bearing system. This particular example of this knife, it does have the very slight radial play in the lock. And I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, it is due 100% to this gray coating on this blade. It is also on the blade tang and the locking surface. When I disassembled this knife, I noticed that while the blade coating is not showing premature wear out here on the blade, it was wearing in the steel-to-steel contact of the locking surface, and it had pushed, the lock bar had literally pushed a ridge of that coating up, and it was keeping the knife from locking to an absolute lockup. It did have a little bit of play. So I took the Dremel and a buffing wheel and a little bit of compound, and I cleaned that off. Now, I did not take it down to metal. I just cleaned all the excess of that coating off, and the lockup was 90% better instantly. It still does have just the, I don't think you can even see it here. It's not enough to see. I can just, with my thumb across the handle and the blade and moving it, I can just barely feel it. It right now is a better lockup than a Benchmade Axis lock, in my opinion and in my experience. I've never had a Benchmade Axis lock that had absolute lockup. Never. So you want to take that into account with these coated blades. On the satin finish blade, I do not think that it would be an issue at all. So as far as action goes, aside from the bearing pivot being dangerously smooth, my particular one wanting to loosen up and for whatever reason Loctite doesn't work on it, no issues there as far as the action goes. We want to touch base on the ergos on this. And the first thing I want to say is about this pocket clip. This is a fabulous pocket clip. It is a deep carry pocket clip. The only drawback is it is right-hand carry only. It is not transferable for the left-hand side. The design of the clip itself, classic spring steel bent clip sort of design. Plenty of clearance between the body of the handle and the clip itself for any type of pocket material. A great clamping surface. On my particular one, you can see where this bend is in the tip here. It really, to me, it should have been bent down flat in the same plane as the rest of the pocket clip. It's a little tip uppy right now, for lack of a better way to say it. And you can feel it in your palm. I don't think that it would be a severe hot spot under hard use, but may be uncomfortable under extended hard use. I will probably clamp this up and just bend that back down flat in the same plane as the rest of the pocket clip. But other than that, fabulous design on this pocket clip, guys. I love the deep carry. You can see the deep carry is in excess of the length of the handle, so once you put this in your pocket, it's gone. It's gone, guys. You don't see any of the handle. And then with this particular coating, it's not super shiny. It's satin, it's gray, a graphite gray, so it's not, you know, blackety black or shiny silver. It really does sort of disappear against the material of the pocket that it's clipped in. Very low key in your pocket, and very much appreciated for that. Ergos on the handle. Again, this is a wide open handle that does not have a bunch of wanky detailing and shaping in it. And if you are a fan and follow Zelrick's channel, he always talks about he prefers a handle that is sort of wide open and simple in design, and I totally agree with Zelrick. He and I are right there together on that one aspect, and this handle fits that. You've got a moderate choil here for good finger placement and a nice little guard sort of section here to keep you from sliding up on the blade. But the rest of the handle is wide open. You do have a slight bit of drop to the butt so that it does fit the curvature of your hand, because your hand is not a straight plane. But this design works in so many different grips. For a reverse grip, you got a nice flat butt end right here. It is extremely comfortable in a reverse grip. Forward grip, the placement of the finger choil in conjunction to the small ramp here and the jimping on the blade is perfect for my hands, my medium-sized hands. My thumb just falls naturally right to that thumb ramp. I do not even have to consciously do it. It just falls perfectly for me. And then the rest of the handle is wide open and non-restrictive. A great ergonomic handle that still has a degree of organic shape to it to make it comfortable to fit in your hand. As far as the usefulness of the blade, it's a drop point blade with a fairly sharp pointy tip. So it's a little more piercy looking drop point, but you do have a good amount of belly to work with. You do have a good amount of flat edge here to work with, depending on your cutting task. The thumb studs are pretty far back, you know, out of the path of the cutting edge. I don't know that you would be back working this part of the cutting edge too much to where the thumb stud would interfere in cutting through some deeper material. So that placement is good. You know, it's a pretty not only attractive looking design blade profile, but a utilitarian profile. And it also, I think, could be very useful in a tactical sense, in a martial sense. It does have a pretty piercy tip to it, although that tip is not super thin and delicate. So ergonomically, I think the knife is great. I'm going to bring out one other knife here to do a comparison. I don't do a lot of comparisons, but I think just to show that this knife is really sort of that perfect EDC size, I'm going to bring out the EDC Undisputed Champion here, the Paramilitary 2. And we're going to let's line up the leading edge of the handle scales. You are going to see the blade length is pretty much the same. The PM2, which does have a long handle, the handle is maybe 1/8 of an inch longer, but these knives are pretty much the same overall. So that will give you a good sense of the size of this knife and its ability to fulfill that EDC role. All right. You know, I've done a lot of reviews on Ganzo Firebird knives, and I typically, when I buy them, I get the carbon fiber models. And reviewing this knife, other than the original design, which is a good design, and the bearing pivot, which I hope we see much more of in their G-Lock models, this is pretty much the same knife that I reviewed about 6 or 8 times now. The quality on these Ganzo knives, if you find anything wrong with these knives, it is typically a very small thing, usually a finish issue. I have seen a couple of minor grind issues on blades that, you know, that I fixed myself in resharpening that did not affect the usability of the knife. And this knife is the same. You know, this knife is absolutely the same. You've seen that in the finish on those small screws, that it's not super even. And those are just the give and takes you see in a $25 and less knife that gives you overall. I mean, really, guys, this knife is pushing the boundaries of what you should expect from a $25 or less knife. 440C blade steel, a ball bearing pivot, a good lock design. The aesthetics are more high end because you've got that carbon fiber look and then the blued screws. It's not only a good looking knife, but a well designed knife and a very highly functioning knife. So am I going to recommend this one? Well, probably, yeah. I may be getting tired of the blue hardware, and I may be getting sort of jaded on the Ganzo Firebird carbon fiber models because they're just all pretty much basically the same. But I really appreciate what this knife has brought to the table. I very much want to see Ganzo continue with the original designs. I very much want to see them continue with this bearing pivot along with the G-Lock and maybe refine that pivot a little bit. I really like this knife, guys. It's a great EDC choice for $25 or less. I can recommend it, and I will recommend it. All right, as always, I thank you for taking the time to watch one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.